Today's conversation on A Bit Personal with Jodi feels especially timely. We're living in a moment where technologies we depend on, from AI to the devices in our hands, are all powered by something most of us rarely think about: memory. And right now, memory is not just essential, it's incredibly high demand and short supply, which makes today's guest someone uniquely important. Sanjay Mehrotra is the CEO of Micron Technology, one of the world's leading memory and storage companies, helping to power everything from cloud computing to artificial intelligence. He's spent decades at the center of this space, co-founding SanDisk and playing a pivotal role in shaping the flash memory revolution. But beyond the scale of what he leads, what I find compelling is how someone navigates that kind of responsibility, especially at a moment when the world is quite literally relying on the decisions he makes. In this conversation, we talk to Sanjay about his journey, the discipline, the long-term thinking required to lead in a cyclical and high-stakes industry, and what it means to stay grounded while operating at the center of global demand. Because this isn't just a conversation about technology, it's about leadership under pressure and the people shaping what comes next. So let's get to it. Sanjay, welcome to A Bit Personal.
Yes, great to be here with you.
Yeah, and I'm
Looking forward to it.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be in your home, this beautiful home, and in your office. There's lots of stories back here. Do you have any favorite books on your bookshelf back here?
Well, actually, quite a few, definitely quite a few. And, we love to collect books when we visit places. So many of them are related to that too. There's a book on Gita, that's like Hindus' holy scriptures. I think that's once in a while, fun to look at some of the pages there too. Yeah.
Nice. Well, I have to say that, we were going to do this interview a few weeks ago, and I got trumped by Trump. Okay, so you got invited to be part of the White House delegation to China. So tell us a little bit what that was like. What was it like to get the phone call, and then what was it like to take the trip?
Well, it was definitely quite an honor and privilege to represent Micron. And definitely it was fun. It was exciting and quite an experience. Took part in President Trump engaging with the CEOs on that morning that he was welcomed in Washington, D.C. And the CEOs that were there were also actually privileged to actually see him welcomed by President Xi. That was an exciting ceremony to watch. And, we took part in some of the bilateral dialogue. President Trump introduced the CEOs in the bilateral dialogue, as well as the banquet at night. So it was overall great to see U.S. and China coming together and, building a relationship toward greater stability. That will be good for everybody.
Right. Talking is good. Even if there's not, hard and fast measures, I think that's that talking is good. Yeah. And so what do you hope comes out of it?
Well, as a business leader, definitely always looking for that environment, that fosters innovation, provides a platform for innovation, benefit to all the businesses, and of course, stability and predictability and certainty around investments as well.
Right. And did you go on Air Force One?
No, I did not.
Okay. I was going to ask if you took any goodies.
No, I did not.
So I've been looking forward to this conversation so much because you and Micron and memory are at the center of our world right now. Certainly, any conversation that happens about AI includes a discussion about capacity, memory, and energy. So it's you're more important than ever. So tell me how this moment feels for you.
I've been in this industry now for 45 plus years, and this is the most exciting time for our industry. And I truly believe that the best is yet to come. Memory becoming such a key enabler for AI, because today memory is not just about a component in devices like smartphones or PCs. Today, memory is absolutely enabling intelligence in artificial intelligence, right? It's helping improve the intelligence. So the opportunities for memory are tremendous. And of course, it's a very exciting time, and very proud of Micron's team as really the only US company that is in semiconductor memory manufacturing. Really proud of the team that has worked hard over the decades and so committed to advancements in memory technology roadmap, product roadmap, to get to this point where memory has become absolutely center of the AI revolution. I always considered Micron as a national treasure. And I think, the world is seeing what a great national treasure Micron is, particularly in the midst of this AI revolution.
Right. Every decision that you're making right now has ripple effects throughout the entire industry and really even the global economy. So how do you handle that kind of pressure? I mean, do you have some sort of habit or ritual or mantra that you do on a daily basis that keeps you grounded and sane?
I think it's all about the team,
Okay.
and really has been wonderful to have worked with very many of these team members for a very long time. Certainly, as I said, Micron national treasure, so very many strong leaders. When I joined Micron, I inherited them as part of my team. But other leaders as well that I've worked for a very long time in the industry in my prior years at SanDisk. Combining the team together, and that team that I truly consider among the very best in the semiconductor industry, and having all the experience of being in our semiconductor industry for so long, I mean, that really is the best asset
Okay.
that I personally have that helps me manage through, all the opportunities and, of course, from time to time challenges in our industry and in our business.
So then, being in your home, I met your beautiful wife a few moments ago. It's very calm here. So that has to be part of it, that when you come from a calm household, that maybe, you don't feel the pressure quite as much.
Absolutely correct. I think the support that the family provides is critically important. And, absolutely, my wife is really a pillar of strength and
Okay.
calmness and composure. And, in memory industry, semiconductor industry, has gone through lots of
Yes.
ups and downs. So having that support system at home absolutely is a big advantage, big plus, no question about it.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about those cycles. So you've been in the industry a long time. You've seen dozens of cycles. I mean, it is the nature of the semiconductor industry to be cyclical. So within the semiconductor industry, memory is the most volatile, and no pun intended. I bet you've heard that before. But today it's always either feast or famine for you guys, and today it's feast. I mean, congratulations on joining the $1 trillion club. You have tons of cash on hand. I mean, your stock price or the valuation of the company is doubled in 48 days. I mean, it's pretty incredible to watch this ride. Is this just another cycle at a different scale, or does AI have the ability to change the nature of our industry?
Absolutely. I think, without semiconductors, there's no AI. And memory is very much the backbone, a key enabler. And, when you, as I mentioned earlier, as, models get larger, as inference continues to grow, you go from training to inference, you go from data center to edge, you just need more and more memory. More memory, more capacity, higher performance, lower power. These are all essential to realize the improvements in intelligence from one generation, from one model to the next, from one inference application to the next. And now agentic AI, right? I think with agentic AI, orchestration of AI, this has led to tremendous increase in demand for memory, whether it is in a GPU platform or a TPU platform or it's an ASIC. You need more and more memory. And so you have to look at the demand side, that memory is a key enabler of intelligence in artificial intelligence. Intelligence is all about data. Data is all about memory. And when you look at token economics, I mean, that definitely relies on memory. And as the token usage grows with greater context windows, greater key value caching, and of course, larger and larger models, it just requires not just compute, but it requires ability to remember, ability to have more memory, higher performance memory as well. So from a demand point of view, this is all still in very, very early innings. We
Okay.
see that AI has long legs here. The other side is supply, Jodi. That is very important to understand the full dynamics here, right? On the supply side, as is well known, supply is extremely short, and this is versus demand. And this is because high bandwidth memory, high performance memory, which is not just high bandwidth memory, feature products like LP6, DRAM, all of them which are critical part of data center, as well as various edge devices, they all just require a lot of wafers because as they get to higher performance, they are becoming bigger in die sizes, requiring more and more wafers. And all of this needs tremendous greenfield capacity. Construction of those fabs takes a long time. Equipping those fabs, qualifying the lines, bringing up the supply, which comes up in a gradual fashion, takes a long time too. So you really have to look at both the demand side and the supply side. And the fundamentals have just changed for our industry in both of those regards.
So, but once the supply side catches up and there's an equilibrium, usually then it begins to tilt, like there's too much. I mean, do you see that in the next 5 years, or just, I mean, because it seems that if this is a cycle and we're on the way up right now, it seems like the correction could be brutal.
So what I would tell you is, again, that this is early days of AI, and more and more memory is going to be needed as AI, as intelligence, as agentic AI advances. On the other hand, supply is way short of demand. I cannot project when supply catches up with demand. We see supply being tight in the industry well beyond 2026 timeframe. And again, you have to just look at the fundamentals. How does supply come up? Supply comes up through greenfield fabs. These fabs, from shovel in the ground to getting first wafers out, takes like 3 years, 4 years kind of time frame. And then you have to ramp up production as well. And of course, that ramp up of production will always be done in line with the latest demand assessments as well. And other thing to point out is that technology is getting more and more difficult. That means each successive generation of technology is giving you less productivity in terms of gigabits gain that you have. All of this combination really bodes for demand and supply fundamentals to stay healthy in the foreseeable future.
Okay. When was it that you first realized that AI wasn't going to be one of these typical technology transitions?
Certainly, fall 2022, with Chat GPT, I mean, that absolutely changed the world and, drove a tremendous inflection point in the demand environment. But even back in 2020 timeframe, we were absolutely, when it was known that AI is starting to build momentum, we had frankly begun to talk about, how memory is going to be at the heart of enabling AI. And even in 21 timeframe, Micron was talking about that increases in supply will be needed because we could see that products like high bandwidth memory and their planned roadmap needed more and more silicon. And high bandwidth memory back then was, barely, less than a single digit percent, 1% of the memory industry. So we could see that future generations of high bandwidth memory are going to require a lot of silicon, and high bandwidth memory will have tremendous growth. And its impact on the supply dynamic. And that's why we said green fields have to be built back even in 2021 timeframe. But there is no doubt that nobody projected that AI will take off at this rapid pace of advancement. And whether it is logic silicon or memory silicon, nobody predicted that the need would grow this fast.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when was it? I mean, I was in China in October of last year, and that was really the first time that I sort of heard grumblings of that there is going to be a major memory shortage. And I think it was CXMT was talking about that they were sold out for the next 2 years. It was the first time that I mean, a little bit of rumblings before that. When was it for you guys that you said, okay, we're in for a major capacity crunch?
I think it was even in our December 2023 earnings
Okay.
call, we had talked about that leading edge memory supply is going to start becoming tighter in 2024. Certainly 2025, we saw that memory supply tightness only was growing. And it was growing not just tightness for leading edge memory growing, but even some of the long life cycle products
Okay.
such as DDR4 memory that go into applications like automotive, industrial, networking, so across the board. So we, began to see some of these trends develop, and we began to speak to it
Okay.
in late 23 and 24 timeframe.
Okay. So people.
As I said earlier, we began to plan our investments even in 21, 22 timeframe.
Right.
But of course, 2023 was a brutal year for the semiconductor industry, and that's when some of the investments in new capacity were slowed down as
Okay.
well.
Okay. So we talk a lot about in our industry, a lot about technology, a lot about innovation, and not so much sort of about the responsibility of the technologies that we're enabling. So how do you feel about Micron and Sanjay's responsibility to the world about AI? And maybe even address, you've heard a few sort of a little bit of a backlash lately about AI. You heard some of these graduation speakers get booed off stage when they mention AI in their commencement addresses. So I mean, there seems to be some grumblings. And how as a person, as a human being, do you worry about AI? How do you? I mean, do you worry about it? Do you think it's something that we should all be concerned about, or it's just something that's going to happen?
I know that there are obviously concerns regarding jobs, getting impacted with AI. But I think the part that we all have to be really excited about and optimistic about is the innovation that AI enables, right? I mean, many of the problems that have been unsolved forever, have opportunity to get solved. And that when innovation happens, that creates tremendous new opportunity as well. And then when you also look at demographics, particularly in the developed countries, right? That demographics, populations are aging in the developed countries. So productivity that AI provides, I believe, will absolutely be essential for the GDP growth rates to continue in the developed countries as well. And in terms of our responsibility, look, we have tremendous responsibility to our customers and, of course, to the team members at Micron as well. Over the course of last several years, we have been absolutely focused on driving a transformation at Micron itself in terms of making Micron a clear technology and product leader in memory and storage. And very pleased that through the hard work of our tens of thousands of team members, Micron has positioned itself today with the most comprehensive technology and product portfolio today. So yes, I mean, that has been a big responsibility. And again, it's the team that enables it, that makes it happen. And I'm very proud of that team. In terms of responsibility to our customers, who are, of course, planning on continuing to invest, CapEx reaching $1 trillion, in the coming, few quarters, right? That is, of course, a big responsibility to ensure that we continue to support their advances in AI, because AI means revenue growth opportunities for them. It means innovation opportunities for our customers. So yes, the responsibility to continue to bring advanced technology products and supply that meets the requirements. This is a big responsibility, and all our team is working very hard towards that.
Okay. Yeah, I was this morning, Arab Brockovich was on one of the morning shows talking about that communities aren't getting a say in these data centers that are being put in their communities. And, that people are seeing their energy costs go up. You have water issues and problems. So I'm just wondering if there is going to be sort of this backlash or pushback on AI.
Of course, the societal issues, of course, have to be always considered, and, it has to provide benefit for the communities and for the broader populations. And I do believe that, with advances that will come with AI, many of them that we may not even be able to imagine today, and then the opportunities that it will eventually create, I think that will be, ultimately good for the community. Of course, it does mean that, yes, jobs will change, new jobs will get created, some jobs will get eliminated, and that's why it's really, really important to embrace AI and leverage it, to realize your own individual highest potential.
Right, right. So as you know, this podcast is called A Bit Personal. So it's the opportunity to tell the personal story behind the public success. So I want to talk about who Sanjay Mehrotra is. And I want to go back to your childhood. I want to go back before Micron or SanDisk or Berkeley or even the US. And help us to understand what childhood was like in the Mehrotra family and in your household, and how maybe some of the ways that you were raised impacted who you eventually became.
So came from humble beginnings, came from a middle-class family in India. I grew up in a home that didn't have a television, that didn't have a phone. And I think the first refrigerator we got in our home was maybe just about the time I became a teenager. So humble beginnings, and of course, always operating. I could see my parents are always operating under tremendous constraints, but always very much focused on their children, and particularly education for their children. So I grew up in a home, that definitely very much focused on family first, home where family values mattered a lot, and home where my dad, absolutely a man of tremendous conviction, force of nature, and really the values he believed in, he stood for them, no matter how hard things around him got in terms of living with those values. I lived under a mom, that was very calm, very composed. As you can imagine, coming from a modest, humble beginnings, our family did go through a lot of ups and downs and financial hardships as well. And both my parents, absolutely focused on the children. So a home that also very much focused on education. I think education was always a priority for us.
So you talk about the values that he stood for even when it was hard. What were some of those values that it seemed like it would have been easier to just back away?
For him, it was very important that equality, for example, men and women getting treated the same. Just keep in mind, I'm talking about 1960s. We are two brothers and two sisters, and my dad would be saying in those times that he has 4 sons, not 2 sons and 2 daughters. And he sent my sister back in the 60s time frame in India to an engineering college. And, the family, absolutely, extended family was thinking that, what is my dad doing? That he's crazy. In those days, there used to be hardly any girls in engineering colleges in India. So I think these are the kind of values that my dad absolutely stood for, and as well as, believing in what is right. Growing up in India, in average society, you could see corruption around you, and he would absolutely never, ever take part in it, and would, even if it meant hardship for him. And many times he ran into hardship, but he would never, support any act of corruption.
That explains a lot about you, and how that you have, always been such a champion of women's rights, and more women participating in our industry. So that tells me a lot. So I'm glad you told me that story. So how did your parents define success in the household?
I think, success in the household was definitely making sure that, family is together, family is respecting each other and caring for each other, staying connected. Success in the household was, definitely, again, that there is respect for elders, and, respect for values that were important to the family. And then certainly success was for the children growing up was, education.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so all four of you were highly educated. Did you
Yes.
all become engineers?
Three of us engineers. Fourth was not an engineer early on. She studied, dietitian courses, but later transitioned to engineering. So all four of us
Okay, wow.
became engineers and practiced engineering.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So were you a very serious kid and a very serious student? I mean, I want to hear about some mischief that you must have caused.
Generally very serious student, on the quieter side, but yes, there were times when did get in trouble, for some of the mischiefs. I mean, some in particularly in college, if the college in India, because I did 2 years of college in India before transitioning to Berkeley here to finish my undergrad. But in very early years in college in India, I mean, if the professor was, kind of boring, I mean, sometimes, attendance was important, you'll give your attendance, but then jump out of the window or out of the classroom to then, spare yourself from the torture of the class. I mean, so some of those things, and, did some of those kind of things along with friends. In India, sometimes it was the whole class will decide that they're going to cut the class, and
Teacher
because
turns around and
attendance
there's no
would
one
be
in there.
important, attendance would be very important.
Okay.
But yes, I mean, teacher would be walking from one side and the whole class will be walking in the other direction. So yes, I have had some of those funny, crazy moments.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
funny. So tell me a little bit about the other, besides family members, other people, places, or even events that impacted you and put you sort of on the path to where you are today.
So one of the most important events, and I often have talked about it, is when I had finished my 2 years of college in India. I was 18 years old. And my dad always had the dream to send me to the US for higher education. Didn't quite have financial means, didn't quite have a plan on how to support it, but he had the dream that he wants to send me to the US. Of course, my elder brother, who was already here, I must always be very thankful to him because, he supported my dad's dream and, said that, okay, he will try to support me. And remember, I mean, he was, I think, at that time only about, in his late 20s. And so went to U.S. Embassy with admissions in hand from U.S. universities, and I got denied my visa 3 times, and 3 different times. And when that happened, my dad didn't accept it, and he said he wants to talk to the consul on duty, who happened to be out for lunch. As he walked back in, my dad essentially grabbed hold of him. And I must say that he was very kind and lucky. We were lucky that he let us into his office. And at that moment, for about 20 minutes, my dad essentially, made a case for me. He was my father. He was my lawyer. He was my coach in that moment.
Wow.
Essentially made a very passionate case, 20 minutes of nonstop from my dad, that why would the council deny me the opportunity to come to the US, that don't they realize that, what a loss it would be for me? But he also said at that time that, you would be denied a very strong student in your country at that time. And at the end of that 20 minutes, I mean, the consul took the passport and he stamped the visa.
Wow.
And, it was a performance of a lifetime for me to watch, right, and learn from. And it was at that moment that I learned that if you ever seek success, start with tenacity. My dad just did not give up. Of course, I also learned and have always appreciated that we were very lucky. I mean, suppose, that counsel had not walked in at that time and my dad was not able to get hold of him, or if he didn't want to listen to him, could have easily, walked him out. We were just lucky as well. So I think tenacity and no question that luck do play an important role. Others that have really influenced, my professor at Berkeley, who absolutely coached me, guided me, back in 1979 when I was looking for jobs and graduating with my master's. He guided me towards Intel, where I joined a team of George Perligos, who absolutely became a mentor for me. So my professor was a mentor, George Perligos at Intel. He was the golden boy of non-volatile memories at Intel Corporation. I learned a lot from him. He really taught me back then in the early 80s that engineering was not just about design engineering, which is, something I had studied for, and I had started as a design engineer first in the industry, but that you had to focus on test and manufacturability, quality, and that this was all the responsibility of engineers designing the chip.
Okay.
So I learned that discipline very early on from him, and I always thank him for coaching me to become a good engineer. And then Ali Harari, the lead founder at SanDisk, he absolutely helped me transition from an engineering manager or an engineer to a business leader. Okay. So, these, my dad, my professor at Berkeley, my first boss in the industry, George Perligos, who later became founder of Atmel Corporation as well, and Ali Harari, the lead founder of SanDisk, have absolutely shaped my career. And I would say that, my wife plays a very, very important role in my journey because, where I am today, this would not have been possible if actually she had not sacrificed her career to raise our daughters. She was a well-respected, accountant as well as controller in the tech industry. But in late 90s, in order to support the kids, gave up her career. And that definitely helped me focus on my professional journey as well.
Okay, very good. So, it's very interesting in our industry because there are a lot of leaders of Indian descent, and they all sort of have a few things in common. That very ambitious, very driven, very disciplined, very resilient. So do you find that those characteristics are true about the other Indians that you work with within the industry? And do you think that helps you? Those characteristics and maybe, being an outsider when you came to the U.S., you think those things help you?
Certainly the background that you come from does shape who you are. It does shape your character. And absolutely that does influence your leadership style as well. No question that, very many of the Indians who are here in the tech ecosystem, went through tremendous amount of competition to be able to get into the best schools in India as well as then schools here in the US. So of course, competition and thriving in competition absolutely deeply rooted because in India, 1.4 billion people, even in your school level, high school level, tremendous amount of competition. But also, India, developing country of very many constraints in terms of resources. Many of us come from humble beginnings, a middle class family background, just like I described it to you for myself. And that learning, how to operate within constraints, I believe, ends up somehow being ingrained in us. Seeing that in our childhood growing up, as well as in terms of managing through, all of the life, growing up, even going to colleges in India, operating under constraint, which when you think about it, that is such an important aspect for running a business, right? And, the other part I would say is that India is a very, very diverse country. And so you end up growing within a lot of diversity. So you naturally learn to respect, to hear various points of views, and that ultimately helps as well. And, lastly, I would say that think about, us as students coming here to the country and giving up, what we have had in our own upbringing there and adjusting into a totally new environment, right? So that adaptability that is needed and that element of risk that is there in just going to a new country. Like when I came here and I went to Berkeley, I didn't know a single person. I didn't actually have even housing arranged, right? So how you have to adapt at that point, how there is certain element of risk that you're taking. You are certainly stretching out of your comfort zone, when you are coming to a foreign country and adjusting to a new education system as well as a cultural environment. It just brings about, I think, a cultural agility as well. So, I mean, all of those things, all of those attributes, when you think about it, it does help in running a business. And, when you come here as a foreign student, you are definitely very much focused on gaining stability, establishing yourself. You are absolutely hungry as well. I think, that again, is something that's always helpful in the business too.
Right. Yeah. And then that makes sense because it's not only just in our industry. I mean, if you look at global companies around the world, so many of them are led by those of Indian descent. So, I mean, it's fascinating. This episode is brought to you by Morgan Stanley. Morgan Stanley celebrated its 90th anniversary last year, and its tech investment banking team has prided itself in working with the most innovative entrepreneurs and leadership companies for decades. During that time, they've led IPOs for hundreds of tech companies, including Apple, ARM, Astera Labs, Broadcom, Cisco, Facebook, Google, NVIDIA, Salesforce, and Uber. In addition, they worked as a trusted advisor and executed thousands of M&A transactions for some of the most industry-defining deals in technology. Throughout the years, Morgan Stanley's tech investment banking team's success has been achieved by dedication, consistency, and a North Star purpose of helping its clients to maximize their opportunities and overcome their challenges. Now, let's get back to the episode. Did all of your siblings end up in the U.S.?
Yes, they
And
did.
did your parents end up in the U.S.?
My parents then in 1980s came to the U.S.
Okay.
as well. Yes.
Okay, nice. So they got to see some of your success.
I mean, at SanDisk, they certainly got to see some of my
Okay.
success.
Okay.
And,
Were they proud?
And both my parents, I mean, my dad, my mom, extremely proud. I know that they would be rooting for me and Micron today as they would have seen the company enter into the $1 trillion club. And my dad was sometimes so proud that he would embarrass me talking about me and my siblings to other members, and I would cringe and I would like to leave the room. So yes, yeah.
That's cute. So it's been so much fun the last few years in our industry because, really starting in 2016, people began to take notice of our industry. By 2020, even everyday people knew about semiconductors because they couldn't get a car or a refrigerator that they wanted. And today we sit at the center of what every country emphatically cares about, including national security. So what do you think about this evolution of the recognition of semiconductors? And do you ever worry about the governments, whether it's our government or the Indian government or others, getting too involved in our industry?
Micron is making investments of $200 billion
Right.
here in America, bringing leading edge memory manufacturing as well as long life cycle memory manufacturing in the US. Just last Friday, actually, we had the start of our first wafers from an expansion and modernization of our facility in Manassas, Virginia, very much targeted toward long life cycle projects.
Okay.
Boise, Idaho, as well as Syracuse, New York, we are making investments to build leading edge memory fabs here. So clearly the importance of semiconductors and certainly importance of memory, how important it is to AI is well recognized by not only the US government, it's definitely recognized by governments, across the world. And so that's a great place for semiconductor industry to be in. And of course, we have tremendous responsibility to ensure that, where we have offices, where we have operations, that we are supporting the growth of our teams, the communities, as well as our operations there.
And so how do you think the U.S. is doing in terms of being competitive worldwide now?
I think US is doing very well. I mean, certainly when we look at Micron as a memory leader here in the US and as the only company in the Western hemispheres that manufactures memory. I mean, Micron is doing very well. US is absolutely leading in innovation, leading with technology. And I think you see that in terms of how AI models are advancing, how inference solutions are advancing. So I think overall US is doing very well. Of course, there is, for such an exciting opportunity, there is intense competition from overseas as well. Certainly competition from China there as well. But I think US is well positioned to continue to lead.
Okay. So it's been very interesting to watch the semiconductor industry's leadership over the years, because I mean, it's not only the people have changed, but the style of leadership has changed a lot. It used to be a pretty brutal industry in terms of leadership. I mean, you think back at the Morris Chang days and at TI, and I'm sure you experienced it probably at the early days of Intel, but it seems sort of a kinder, gentler leadership today. Do you believe that? I mean, do you think, and why do you think that has changed?
Yeah, I think, the industry was definitely, in the early years, semiconductor industry was very much a go kind of industry, right? And with technology advancing fast, product innovation happening, applications growing from PCs to mobile phones to cloud, very go kind of industry. And I think the industry has generally recognized that it's not only about technology and products and manufacturing and business and revenues and profits, but it is also about culture. And I think that increased focus on culture in the semiconductor industry definitely has brought about a different kind of leadership transition across the industry too.
Right. Yeah, you've built an amazing culture at Micron, and obviously very intentionally. So how would you describe your leadership skills or leadership style?
My leadership style is definitely one that can focus into the details when necessary. I mean, definitely engineering driven, very much data driven, but also very much reliant on the team and extremely focused on moving fast and customer focused as well. I'll tell you that early years of my leadership at SanDisk, one could say that I was a micromanager because I would be extremely into all the details. Some can say even today that I can be a micromanager when needed. I personally believe that in our industry, when technology moves so fast, products are moving so fast, customers are moving so fast, competition is moving fast, it is important to be able to see the big picture as well as to be able to dive into the details when it's necessary to ensure that the company is realizing its fullest potential. So I do think that balance is needed, and I'm able to drive that balance. But in order to drive that balance, you have to be close to engineering as well as you have to have strong leaders and strong reliance on those leaders. And so at the end of the day, it always is about the team. So my leadership style is very much reliant on having a strong team working with me.
You're sort of quiet and understated. Is that intentional, or is that just part of your personality?
I am. I mean, that is definitely part of my personality, that I am on the quieter side. And certainly also in situations, I would intentionally want to listen as well. Listen, process, analyze, think, decide. And I think just listening, I do think, is extremely important.
Right, right. Well, how would you describe the culture at Micron?
Culture at Micron is a culture, where we enable everybody to be able to express their views. We say that we want to hear all ideas and let the best ideas win. We really try to promote that people should be able to speak up, raise their hand when they see that something can be done differently, better, faster, cheaper, or, something is not right and there's an opportunity for improvement. We always want to encourage our team members to be able to speak up, and that's something we always absolutely encourage. Micron is absolutely a very tenacious company. And being in the memory industry, especially now 47 years old, definitely required tremendous amount of tenacity. So the culture, tenacity is a very deeply rooted value in the company. It is also a company where people do care about each other. So people is another core value of Micron. That's just, I think, how the founders of the company, in the early days in Boise, but even as it expanded globally, I think that caring for people, understanding people, and especially working with different cultures, I think is an important part of a Micron culture. I would say innovation, absolutely deeply rooted in Micron. Look at it. I mean, again, there used to be, dozens of companies in the memory industry. Today, very few, only really in DRAM, there are only 3. And in the US, there's only one DRAM company, and that's Micron, right? So, certainly that is enabled by Micron's ability to constantly innovate and leverage it to the company's benefit. We have transitioned Micron culture from being a follower or being a survivor to today becoming a clear leader, and not just survive, but thrive as well. And I mean, the team at Micron is very much focused on absolutely winning.
Okay. Yeah, I see Micron as a very progressive company, and that's not easy to say about a company as old as Micron. And in being in memory, sort of think of that as, I don't know, a less, fancy kind of technology. I
But
mean, it is now for sure, but
I would definitely want to correct that impression, and that is something people often have misunderstood about memory, that how hard it is to make memory. I mean, the physics, the chemistry, the material science, all of the engineering that goes into designing these memory chips, producing them in large volume, making sure they have the reliability, the quality, the testability, and ramping those into large volumes, and ensuring that every bit out of these trillions of bits in a product are behaving correctly. I mean, there's so much physics and science involved in it. It's hard stuff. It's really hard stuff.
Right.
And now it's getting even harder, because it's not just about scaling. It is absolutely about how to deliver that performance that truly enables AI from data center to edge, to deliver it in those higher capacities in those various packages that are needed, right? So this is what I think, people many times underestimate. Memory is very, very hard stuff, and one should never underestimate that how much technology and engineering goes into producing memory. It is no less than any other part of semiconductor industry, and certain aspects I would say that are even harder in memory.
okay, we now stand corrected.
I appreciate that.
So, there's this sort of tension these days between providing opportunity and sort of performative inclusion, the tension between the two. There, as many companies have dismantled their DEI teams internally within companies, stopped any sort of single-sex programs within their companies. And, we've talked for a long time, because you really were a huge proponent of the GSA's Women's Leadership Initiative, in making sure that this industry has the talent that's necessary to get to $1 trillion plus in revenues. That if you're ignoring 50% of the population, it's a great place to start. So it was never about sort of lowering any standards. It was trying to make this industry attractive, to bring people in, and once they're in, to make it a great industry for women. So how do you think we're doing? How do we solve that kind of tension between performative and actual opportunity?
I think you said the key words. It was never ever about compromising on merit. I think absolutely, semiconductor industry, you cannot thrive if your team is not of the highest merit and your focus is not on merit. And so, I mean, that has always been Micron's focus. Certainly, as I said, I think it is very important that if you want to drive innovation and you want to drive the best outcomes for the business, it's important to be able to hear all ideas, and let them bubble up and decide which are the best ideas to pursue, and providing an environment, in that regard, an inclusive environment for all to be able to express their point of views and to be able to debate them and move forward, I think is just important. And that's just the natural part of Micron as well. And at Micron, I think, the company has 61,000 plus patents. I mean, we are an innovation powerhouse here, among the very top innovators in the world. I mean, Micron has one of the innovators who has now exceeded Einstein's patents and is among the top 5 or so innovators, I believe, in the country. So innovation is flourishing well at Micron. Women innovators, we launched a program in women innovation several years ago, and women innovators at Micron, in terms of their numbers, are continuing to increase as well. And we really want to make sure, because IP is such a competitive advantage, and IP and innovation is what provides you differentiation in your technology and products. We absolutely put in a lot of work in making sure that we convey to our broader teams across the board, all team members, that how important innovation is, how important IP is. And innovation is not just about technology or products. It is absolutely about business processes. I mean, how to do things better, differently. And especially now with AI, as we drive AI transformation at the company, lot of opportunity for innovation. It's not about bolting AI on old business processes. Now is the time to reimagine what we are doing and then add AI elements to it. So this is all part of Micron's culture, and this wouldn't happen if we didn't promote a culture of inclusion and everybody to be able to speak up and express their point of views and hear what others have to say as well.
Right. What would you say to young women that are on a STEM path at university, the top of their class, they're either double E or physics? What would you say to them about joining the semiconductor industry?
I would say come join Micron. And, this is the best time for semiconductor industry. And so much exciting opportunities ahead. And come join the workforce, be part of it, be part of the change transformation that is ahead for our industry. And not only say it to those that are in the semiconductor curriculum in their universities, I would absolutely say that to young students, those that are in middle grade or middle school or high school, would love to see that they get inspired toward STEM. Micron actually, for last several years, has been taking what we call our chip camp to the communities across US, particularly where we have operations, getting our team members to participate in it, going to middle schools and high schools, and taking the basic education about chips, about semiconductors, and to these students, making them aware of the power of semiconductors and sparking interest in sciences, interest in STEM in them. This is really, really important in order to build the workforce of the future right here in this country. Right. Our investments of $200 billion are going to add like 90,000 jobs in the ecosystem. So Micron has to take the responsibility and to invest in bringing everybody into the semiconductor workforce, not just women, but veterans, people from all kinds of backgrounds, to join our workforce, because we need to add. We have shortage of talent here as well.
Right. So you've talked about the investment of $200 billion over the next few years in the U.S. And, you have to make those kinds of decisions. We talked about the feast and famine in the memory industry. And at a time that there was a lot of famine, you had to make those kind of big decisions. How do you get comfortable with that kind of risk and in making those kind of decisions? And do you ever doubt yourself?
I mean, I have been in this industry, in the memory industry, for 45 plus years. I love this industry, have always believed in the potential of this industry, have always believed that the best is yet to come, and am super excited, to be able to work with our customers to advance AI. And it has been clear that this needs investments to be made. But of course, investments are not made blindly. I mean, investments are made with discipline. Investments are made with data, understanding the technology, the applications, where the applications are going, working closely with our customers to understand where they are going, and what role does Micron play. All of that ultimately translates into our assessment, along with our customers' assessment of what the demand projections can look like. Of course, can go wrong. Sometimes can be oversupplied, sometimes can be undersupplied. And right now with AI, this demand environment is here to stay. So understanding, working closely with the customer, understanding the applications and the demand trend and the value proposition of memory, and shifting the portfolio toward higher value solutions. And then, of course, with continued success of that execution of that strategy, of course, then you make the investments based on data and based on always discipline regarding that investments. I always emphasize that because this is a very important part of Micron's strategy. Today, we are investing in building the green fields, the shells. As these shells get built out, of course, we'll exercise discipline in terms of how we equip these cells. That discipline means always assessing what the demand projections are, looking at what the technology capabilities are in terms of giving us bit growth, looking at what the product requirements have to be, how do they impact the supply dynamic, assessing all of that, and of course, managing the risk appropriately and managing CapEx in highly efficient manner. These are some of the priorities that our entire team very much focuses on.
Okay. You ever have any self-doubt?
We do not have self-doubt. I mean, we absolutely believe in the opportunity for memory. Today, I think it is very, very clear. And I think always what is important in our business is be able to adapt and be agile. And Micron has shown that over the years, that yes, we have exercised financial discipline, but we have shown tremendous adaptability and agility as well.
Okay.
The future of technology will be built on the foundation of advanced hardware and AI. For leaders in this space, the pressure to make the right call on everything from R&D to market expansion is immense. KPMG works with leaders who are building this future. They will help you navigate the risks, responsibilities, and the possibilities of transformational technology so you can make clearer, more confident decisions. When your trusted advisor understands the stakes, you can focus on what's next. Learn more at kpmg.com. Let's get back to the episode.
So, oftentimes when people look at CEOs, they think that it's a pretty glamorous job to have. I mean, you make the big bucks, you get to go to the White House, you fly on private planes, all these things. But really, the life of a CEO is a pretty tough job. I mean, it's a huge responsibility and great sacrifices. So I want to ask you if you've ever had to make sacrifices as a human being, had to make sacrifices for your job that you regret making.
I do not regret making sacrifices, but definitely I had to make sacrifices, and I don't regret making them. But the sacrifices were around time, and sacrifices in terms of giving sometimes time to family, giving time to parents, giving time to extended family. Those sacrifices over the career have certainly been made because, throughout my career journey, it has been extremely demanding to be at the bleeding edge of technology, of memory. The job has involved tremendous amount of travel as well, given that have always been a very global company. So I would say that those are the only sacrifices of time towards loved ones that I absolutely sometimes wish had given some more time, for example, to my parents.
Right. So you've been married for 42 years, and I met your wife earlier. Tell us a little bit about that. First of all, it started out as an arranged marriage, so I want you to maybe address that because a lot of people don't necessarily understand the dynamics behind that. And then how you've done it. I mean, once again, great sacrifices probably made on both sides. But there are a lot of young people out there that are very reluctant to start families or think, how can I have this like amazing, exciting career and have a happy home life?
Yeah.
Is it possible?
And again, certainly a lot of sacrifices here with respect to the time spent when I said with the loved ones, that certainly includes my family, certainly includes my wife, as well as my children. Very, very fortunate to have an amazing wife, who has amazingly calm demeanor, and is able to go through the ups and downs in a very balanced manner and remains a rational thinker. And yes, we were introduced by our parents and we got married 42 years ago. And yes, arranged marriage, it has absolutely worked wonderfully well for us. And arranged marriage of course requires commitment, right? And of course requires adjustment, right? And I think both of us, and I would say my wife certainly has managed that extremely well. And I have had to make adjustments and absolutely a commitment as well. So very fortunate and feel very blessed to have this successful marriage, which absolutely has been a key contributor to my career journey.
Okay, so you ended up making a career sacrifice when you all were first married because she couldn't get into the US and you actually took a different direction in your career than you thought. And somehow Floyd Kwame plays into this. And I was friends with Floyd Kwame. We served on the Empower America board together once upon a time. So tell me that story.
Yeah, we got married in 1984, and it would have taken my wife about a year to year and a half for her to get her green card to be able to come to the US. So during that time, she did not have the visa to come to the US. And Floyd Kwame, who was the chairman of the startup company called Seek Technology that I was with, which was a spin-off from Intel. Intel was the first company I joined in 1980, and then around 82 timeframe, there was this spin-off called Seek Technology that I joined. And I was actually, a few years later, in that 1984 timeframe, I was going to be leaving Seek to join a startup which eventually became Atmel, and I would have been a co-founder at Atmel. And Floyd Kwame took me out to lunch. He, as the chair, was basically working on talking me out of leaving SanDisk and talking me out of starting that company, Atmel. Ultimately, I did not join Atmel, did not start it. But Floyd Kwame figured out that my wife was at the time in India, and he said he can arrange for me with the company Seek to go work in Europe and have my wife be able to come to Europe, to join me there. And I pounced on that opportunity, and because the two of us could lead our early times of the married life together, rather than me being here in US and she being in India while she was waiting for her green card. So we chose to go to London, and she was able to get her permit to come to London. And I worked as European Applications Engineering Manager for about a year for Seek. And I really thank Floyd Kwame because going from an engineer, which I was at the time, to a responsibility for applications engineering, where the chips that I had designed, I was seeing what were the kind of challenges my customers were facing in terms of their own applications. I learned a lot about the customer side of things, about the application side of things in that 1 year period. And it really, truly made me realize how important customer is, that you cannot develop technology or products in void. You have to work closely with customers. So I have to say that that 1 year experience when we were newly married, thanks to Floyd Kwame, was an amazing experience of us being together in the first year of our marriage in Europe. But it also was an amazing experience for me appreciating the value of customer focus, which we today call one of our core values at Micron as well.
Okay. And what is the one or two things that she's taught you about partnership that that you see bleeding over into your work life?
In terms of partnership, she definitely taught me that sometimes before rushing into saying something, just think a little, even if it is few seconds before you say it, because otherwise sometimes you can say something that you just regret. And, that's something she has definitely taught me to think before you necessarily blurt out a response, right? That has been absolutely extremely helpful, particularly in certain challenging situations. Also, I'll share with you a funny story. I mean, one of the first interviews that I ever did was at CNBC way back. I mean, this is sometime in 2000s time frame. I can't remember the exact year. It was Squawk on the Box. And that interview had occurred very early in the morning, like maybe 5 a.m. Pacific time. First interview, so obviously nervous on national TV. And, she, of course, was watching from home, my first ever CNBC interview. I come back home and, she has a blanket over her head and she just quietly says that you have a very nice smile, use it more often, and that has just stayed with me.
Okay.
That has just stayed with me because obviously in that interview I was tense. I was not smiling, and that has just stayed with me in every situation, and sometimes in meetings or in particularly public speaking situations, that importance of being at ease and that smiling, how important that is, just what it communicates to the rest of the audience and how it helps you build the rapport. So yes, I mean, she has been a tremendous coach for me.
And you do have a great smile. So you also raised two daughters who became engineers, so bravo on that. Tell me how that they view your success in your career.
For the longest time, they had not realized that, their dad was an important executive in the technology industry, and which is all good because, our focus was always raising our family, being in the family, and keeping work, really separate from, family interactions. Even though I was traveling a lot, but I would absolutely try my best to even sometimes call my kids on the phone if they needed some help with some homework. I remember my older daughter, she was in high school, needed some, or maybe 8th grade, and needed some help with linear algebra. And I was on the phone with her, trying to work out the problem. So I have, even when I'm traveling, I have tried to absolutely stay as close to the family, and always through daily calls and conversations with the kids, have always tried to be there. So as far as my two daughters go, extremely proud of them, and they have grown with tremendous values that I absolutely credit my wife, with respect to giving them the core values, which I'm very proud of for them as well. And they have pursued their passions, but yes, they both have ended up becoming engineers, and they're both in product management in the tech industry today.
Okay. So did you play the same sort of poetic role that your father played in your life that you think you played in their life?
I mean, definitely very much focused on education as well, and absolutely made sure that both my daughters understood that education was important, and shared with them that how education helped my own career, and for us to be where we are, that education absolutely was key there. So yes, I mean, just like my parents emphasized education, I definitely emphasized education to my kids. Perhaps one difference would be that, particularly, with the kids growing up here in the US, I mean, you have to recognize that it's not just about academics, it is also about extracurriculars. And, our kids, definitely pursued their passions in areas outside of academics as well. And they still do, to this day, pursue their passions. And in that regard, somewhat different than my own upbringing. And also, let them choose their own careers. My older daughter, when she went to college, she thought she's going to be a pre-med. But very quickly, in the first year or two, she actually gravitated toward engineering. My younger daughter, she thought she is going to be more toward public policy, but very quickly she too,
Okay.
gravitated toward engineering when in college.
Okay. Very nice. Very nice. So I'm going to end on a question and just ask you, what would people miss about who you are as a person if they just looked at your resume?
Couple of things I would say here. One thing, very funny thing, that one time I had met a CEO in the semiconductor industry, who's still a CEO at semiconductor industry. When I met him for the first time, he said to me, boy, I had an image of a very tall person. And it's just funny that, looking at my background, looking at my resume, he was expecting a tall person. So people wouldn't see in my resume that I'm actually short, right? So that's just a funny side of it. But also, I don't think if they would look at my resume, they would know that how much I love my family. And my kids, my daughters meant the world to me. I'm very proud of them. My wife has been absolutely the rock in my life. And now the grandkids.
Yes. So
and
two and
I
one
have
on the way.
two granddaughters and a third granddaughter on the way. And the two granddaughters are 3 years old and 3 months old. And on the two different coasts. But, they bring out the kid in me. And, when I'm with the 3-year-old, I play like a little kid, and she absolutely thinks that, whether it's going on the slides or it's going on the swing or getting inside a little tent to read a book to her, she absolutely thinks that I am a 3-year-old too. And this is something people would not realize when they look at my resume.
Right, right. Well, I'm glad I got to know you a little better, and I'm sure that our audience is going to be thrilled to know the personal story behind your success. So thank you, Sanjay.
Jodi, I really enjoyed this, and thank you for covering so many topics and taking me back to my childhood years, as well as discussing some of the most important aspects of our industry as well. Thank you for what you have been doing for this semiconductor industry for decades now. Have known you and really have appreciated on how you bring this industry together in some important, very important dialogues for our industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.